this skill in particular is so important because it is all over your unit test. So hopefully, since the unit test is tomorrow, it will already be fresh in your brain and you'll ace those questions compared to some of my students from previous years. I think piecewise functions are really easy because there's really no calculating you need to do. It's just like reading the menu, honestly. So this example, which is on the back of your 4.12 notes, we started it yesterday. Can you stop with the light side shadow, please? It says function C represents the dollar cost of renting a bike from a bike sharing service for T minutes. The rules for describing them are shown there. So you have to know how to read like function notation, for example. If this is the function notation, what's the input? T, and what does T represent in this situation? Okay, great. So that would be like one of the first few things you figure out so that you can read this properly. I know most of the time you like to see like X on the left and Y on the right, but the way that they have this written, their X's, their inputs are on the right because they're using the letter T and gives the input in the parentheses. And T stands for time in minutes. And then over here, this must be the cost for whatever time frame they're talking about. And if you remember our lesson from domain and range, whenever we write things like this, we're basically saying when that number is between 0 and 30, between 30 and 60, between 60 and 90 is what that basically means. All right, you'll see some of the numbers repeat, but there's only one price for a certain number. Okay, so you have to know based on the inequality symbol what price goes with if it's 30 exactly, what price it is if it's 150 exactly, and so on. All right, so you see a similar question to this on your constructed response, which you picked up yesterday. So that tells you like you're going to do a constructed response question, that's similar to this, where you answer questions from reading the rules and make a graph to go with it. And then if you go to the back of your constructed response, one of the very first things it asks you is a situation a piecewise function? So you have to know what a piecewise function is. And all it is, we talked about this yesterday, is something that uses different rules for different parts of the domain. So whatever the domain is, minutes, ounces, whatever the domain is, there's different rules for different parts of it. So like that warm up we did yesterday with the yogurt. This one. For the first 8 ounces, they were charging 50 cents per ounce. And then after 8 ounces, they just charged $4. So that would be an example of different rules for different parts of the domain, different parts of the X. Does that make sense? So piecewise functions can look like this, where it's like different pieces put together. But I feel like most of the time, they look like this. Not all of the time, but most of the time, they look like these little dumbbells. Because like we said, there's only one price for a certain amount. And that's shown by like the open versus closed circles. So keep that in mind when we do the next example. All right, so and I know we started completing the table. Let's start from the beginning. If I am riding the bike for 0 minutes, how much does it cost me? $0. Because, I mean, if you're not using it at all, then. And also, does this symbol next to the 0, does it have an equal to? It doesn't. If it did, then I would say yes, $2.50. But it doesn't. When it's 0 exactly, it's going to cost you $0. Anything above 0, though, even if it's just like a second or a minute, then it's gonna cost $2.50. So table 7, if it's 10 minutes that we're renting it, how much does it cost?
$2.50.
$2.50. Because 10 best fits in between 0 to 30. So that's what I mean, like reading the menu. Find where that number best fits. If it's best between 0 to 30, that means that this is the price. Table 1, what about 25 minutes? How much would it cost? $2.50 as well. Because the 25 fits between 0 and 30. Table 2, what about 60 minutes? $5 is correct. Now there is 2 spots where it mentions the 60, so you need to know which one is for the correct price. We have this symbol next to the 60 there and this symbol next to the 60 there. We want the one that has equal to, so that means that would be the price. All right, if it's 60 exactly, then this is the price. This. So there's that. Table 3, what about 75 minutes? Good. Table 4, what about 130 minutes? Good. 130, that fits in between these 2 numbers. Price. Table 5, what about 180? Good, because 180 fits best between these 2 numbers, and that price is 15. Questions on that? So if you can do that, you can answer questions like the first one on your constructed response. You also need to be able to graph. And when we're graphing, because I think a lot of people like remember these as coordinates and whatnot. If the rule looks like this, like it's just one price for a certain amount, it's probably going to look more like this one from the front of your notes, like the little dumbbells. So for each row, I should have a different segment on my graph. And we need to pay attention to our open versus closed circles. If it does not have a line underneath, is it open or closed? Open circle, if it does not have a line underneath the inequality symbol. So then if it does have a line underneath it, it's going to be a closed circle. You did that in your inequalities units. And think of it like bubbling an answer on a test. If I'm closing the circle, then that number is included in the solution set. Riley has it here. Questions on that? Okay, so then we'll do 2 rows together and then I'll have you finish the graph yourself. So my first X values that it's talking about are 0 to 30, because this is 0 to 30 minutes. Here's where it is on my X-axis. That output is 250, but at the 0, I should have an open circle. At the 30, I should have a closed circle where that output is 250. And in between them should be a line because they're the same price from 0 up to 30. The next row, 30 to 60. So here's 30 to 60 on my x-axis. That output is 5. So find where that goes on the graph and make sure you're putting an open circle. That doesn't look open. Put an open circle above the 30, a closed one on the 60, and a line connecting them in between. Do that for the rest of the rows of the rule. I'm going to freeze my screen and finish the graph as well so that we can compare. So you're finishing the graph, you're gonna compare it to mine in less than a minute. So you can see if you did that right. So for each row on your rule, because this all basically is a rule, there should be a different segment of the graph, and I'll highlight it. I don't recommend you highlight it. I'm just going to show you. For this row, my input was 60 to 90. The output was 750. That's why it touches here on the graph. But you need to make sure you have an open circle on one end, a closed circle on the right-hand side, because that's how our symbols go. They could, I mean, it'd be kind of weird, but they could decide to put the closed circles on the left side if they decide to, by just putting lines underneath this one and no lines underneath that one. Just go based off where the equal to part underneath. Next, we have this row. So 90 to 120, that output was 10. That's why I put it this high. Next row was the output of 1250, where the X's are 120 to 150, should be this high. And then for the last rule, the inputs go all the way up to 720, but on our graph, it just goes up to 240. So that is why I didn't put a closed circle on the right-hand side, because it doesn't end there. I mean, the graph ends there, but it goes all the way up to 720 for the price of 15. So that's why it just keeps going. But there should be an open circle on the left-hand side, because that's what the symbol would indicate. Questions on that? Carson, sit up. All right, so you will be doing that on your constructed response test. So be able to read and transfer that onto the graph. The other thing you'll be tested on for piecewise functions is to interpret it correctly. So if it said, for example, for this situation, find C of 8 or 80, first you'd answer the output. So think about what the output is if the input's 80. All right, what's the output if the input's 80? What's the output if the input's 80? It's like this, except not in table forms. It's in function notation. That 80 is replacing this T. So find the section where 80 best fits on the T's. Where does 80 best fit? Does 80 best fit between 0 to 30? Does it fit between 30 to 60? Does it fit between 60 to 90? Yeah. Yes. Like mentally plug in the number and see, does that make sense? It makes sense here. So the output is 750. Usually kids could get that answer right. Although you guys are kind of scaring me right now, but it's like this. Just in function notation form. But then they also have parts where you fill in the blanks and say it says something like this. All right, usually kids get this part wrong, and I don't really understand why. We did this before with function notation when we did that lesson and had to interpret it way in the beginning of this unit. I had you guys practice saying 80 what, 750 what? Is this 80 minutes or dollars? Minutes, because it was replacing the T, and T is for minutes. So that means this 750 is And if they give you the graph, that's even easier. Otherwise, you just have to read to figure out what the other thing was. And when you're filling in these blanks, the cost is what? $80 or $7.50? So you make sure you put the $7.50 there. The cost is $750 for renting for blank minutes. How many minutes? I think students just like seeing that this 80 was first and they just want to put it in like the first blank. You have to read. You have to do that little scratch work that I told you to do, attach the units to each number, and then make sure that those units are attached to that number in the sentence. Otherwise, you're mixing. All right. Questions on piecewise functions? Right, that's all I wanted to do from that. So you do have a practice to practice the specific skill with it. However, your unit 4 test is tomorrow, so I would kind of prioritize the study guides because I'm hoping this will be fresh in your mind tomorrow and that you'll spend more of your time reviewing the things that you did before break that you may have forgotten. So work on your study guides. I'm going to call you for your binder check. You will also have a take-home quiz. It's not finalized yet, but when you finalize this afternoon. I don't have time to give you a quiz in class. So basically, if you want the feedback from it, then take it at home. It's only 10 points. So I mean, if you cheat on it, it's not going to drastically slow me. But I would really like for students to see the test style questions that you'll probably see tomorrow and see if you're getting them right. Otherwise, you'll have to either ask me questions today in class right now, talking in tutoring today until 3, or email me, but you are testing tomorrow in class for unit 4. Any questions? So you should be pretty busy this hour. It'll take you that long to get your binder deck out and ready. And then you're doing your study guides. 12 practice. The take-home quiz you'll have until Monday to do. Otherwise, I'll just use your unit 4 test score.